Welcome to Insights in Sound, where we talk to the people behind the scenes, behind the technology, and behind the music. People you may not know, but you should. And please check out getitinwriting.net/shows for a full list of our podcast YouTube series.
My guest is Val Garay. His production credits include, James Taylor, Carly Simon, Seals and Crofts, Kim Carnes. Who else am I missing?
Neil Diamond.
Of course.
Carlos Santana, Elton John, Jackson Brown, Four Seasons, Frankie Valli.
So a bunch of nobodies, basically. Yeah.
Marvin Gaye, Jackson 5, Andrew Gold, J.D. Souther. I don't know, the list is pretty long.
The list is lengthy, yeah. Your production ethos is what I'm going to want to get into in a minute. But first, let me dive into your background a little bit, because you sort of came about this from a rather circumlocucious fashion, right?
Circumlocucious. That'd be a great way to describe it. Yes.
I mean, you dropped out of medical school, which I think is kind of interesting, but you did come from a musical family.
Yes. My father was a singer and an actor his entire adult life, and very successful at that, actually. He did 30 films. He did 3 major films. It Happened One Night with Clark Gable. He did. He starred in the 3rd movie Walt Disney made called The Three Caballeros, where he sang all the songs as the character, Panchito. And I got to meet Walt Disney when I was a kid. And he started in 1932 at the famous theater in San Francisco. I think it was the Orpheum Theater downtown, with Walt Rosner and his orchestra. And he moved on from there. And he was 19 at the time.
So was that when talkies were still a novelty?
Pretty much, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So obviously that influence must have rubbed off on you somehow, because you find show business intimidating.
It was twofold. The show business part of it never enamored me in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I was kind of anti.
I could see that.
Because anywhere I went with my father, who was in his own world a pretty big star, people were always all over me, like, "What are you going to do when you grow up? And what is your father like?" And and I'm like, "Leave me alone, man."
Right.
So, my uncle was an exceptional guitar player. My father's brother. He never had the success my father did, but he was an incredible guitarist. He played by ear. He could play any song, any key, boom. And he had a trio that he worked in the Bay Area with for 50 years. And he got me interested in learning how to play guitar. And that's who taught me. And he also managed my first band. And we rehearsed in his garage.
That explains a lot. So you really did come to it from an artistic perspective, rather than from a...
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally from an artistic side.
That's...
No training, no background, nothing. My mother never tried to get me to learn to play piano, which I wish she had, but she didn't. So yeah, it was pretty much on-the-job training.
So was there something in particular that prompted you to just kind of trash the whole med school thing? And do tell.
Driving down the El Camino Real from a nightclub in Belmont that I was at on a Saturday night at 3 a.m. and I Want to Hold Your Hand came on the radio, and I almost hit 3 parked cars. And from that moment on, I was gone.
I wonder how many people can blame the Beatles for their careers.
I'm telling you.
You and me both, and so many others. Yeah.
Totally responsible for me doing a 90-degree left turn. I mean, it was like I was completely blown away. I had to be part of that somehow. I didn't care how. I didn't care if it was sweeping up floors in a recording studio or carrying amps around for a guitar player. I didn't care.
Now this would have
But I ended up being very artistic in the beginning. I was in 4 bands, 2 of which were, first one was signed to Lou Adler and Node Records, which was his label beginning. Jeff Daniel. The second one was I was signed to Clive Davis with Ron Elliott, who came out of San Francisco, and the Bo Brummels, and he and I and Keith Barber got a big hit. 1969 called Echo Park. We put a band together. Clive signed us, paid a fortune for us. Abe Hawk managed us, big manager, and the day the album came out, he got fired from Columbia.
There's so many music industry stories like that, you know. Now, so this was all Bay Area stuff then initially, right? Because you grew up in the Bay Area.
The first band that I was in was the Bay Area, but that was a local band doing covers. Never really went anywhere, but we had a great time, made good money, and then I moved to LA, and that's when the serious music,
Okay.
original, everything started.
Yeah, that's when. Well, so you recognized early on that the Bay Area scene, even though there was a music scene there, it was
Yeah,
kind of
but it was very eclectic.
Yeah,
The Jefferson Airplane, that's an eclectic band. I mean, I knew Skip Spence pretty well, and he was
No, the Airplane were
weirdest
eclectic. Grateful
dude
Dead,
I ever met.
Quicksilver, all those
I'll
guys.
tell you,
You know.
there was a very famous nightclub in San Mateo called the Inn Room, called the Morocco Room,
Okay.
which was owned by a guy named Richard Romanello, who the first band that he brought in, and this is 1963 or 4, the first band that he brought in was called the Bo Brummels.
Mm-hmm.
Big band.
Yes,
Ended up
they were
having
big for their time.
huge hits.
Mhm.
Everybody thought they were from England. Laugh, Laugh, and Just a Little both went top 10. Ron Elliott was the writer. Sal Valentino, real name Stompanato, was the lead vocalist. And, they did every major TV show. And
Produced by Sly Stone, in fact. Produced by Sly Stone, is that right?
Well, that's an
Right.
interesting story. The first concert I ever went to at 16 was at the Cow Palace,
Mhm.
and it was Bobby Rydell and the Dovells.
Oh, wow.
And the band leader, who at the time was also 16 years old, was also a bass player in the band, and that was Sly Stone
Uh-huh.
at 16.
Uh-huh.
So when I signed in that first band in the Bay Area with Tom Donahue's label, Autumn Records, Sly was supposed to produce us, but then he had to go out of town, and so Ron Elliott ended up doing it. But Ron and I became close friends, and that's why years later, when I decided to put that group together with Ron, myself, and Keith Barber, he wanted to do it because he knew my musical background and where I came from.
Mm-hmm.
But it was an interesting time because, Tom Donahue had the Bo Brummels signed, he had Sly Stone signed, he had a group called the Tikis, which was Teddy Templeman's band, which later became Harper's Bazaar.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, I knew I'd
He had
recognize that
another
name.
band called the Mojo Men, which was Jan Erico.
Uh-huh.
Sit Down, I Think I Love You.
Oh, uh-huh.
They had a lot of talent, but then he blew all the money at the track and the whole thing went in the tank. I moved to LA.
Okay. So you did discover early on that LA was sort of the mecca for a lot of that stuff.
The pinnacle of the music industry at that time.
Now, let's talk about technology a little bit, because when you came in, obviously, that would have been like late 60s, mid to late 60s.
1965.
Okay, so we're still talking 3-track, 4-track.
3-track.
Yeah, okay.
Not even 4-track yet. In fact, my first record that I did with Lou Adler was done 3-track at Western Studio 3.
I love it.
Room where he cut everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that room.
And the crazy part is we had a really good band. The guitar player, Terry Clements, went on to become Gordon Lightfoot's guitarist for 40 years until he passed away recently from a stroke. Eddie Ho was the drummer for the Mamas and Papas as well as for us.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Day was a really infamous bass player out of the Bay Area who wrote Just Like Me for Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Uh-huh.
It was a pretty amazing group. And Patty, who was the other lead singer, came out of a big local band in Los Angeles. So it was pretty effective,
Mm-hmm.
And we could all play pretty good. And
Yeah.
we made a demo where I got Lee Michaels to come in and play harpsichord because
Ooh.
he was in a band on Sunset called at the Action was the name of the club, and it was Joel Scott Hill Trio, and Lee Michaels was the keyboardist, and Bob Mosley was the bass player.
Oh, wow. Really?
Swear to God.
Yeah.
Santa Monica Boulevard.
Uh-huh.
So we made the demo, and that's what got to Lou, and that's why he signed us. But when we went in to cut it for real, there was the Wrecking Crew,
Of course.
and we didn't get to play on our own record.
Of course. Which was pretty much de rigueur for the time.
Yeah,
you
but
know.
boy, we're real pissed off.
Uh-huh.
I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah.
And the demo, I have copies of both. The demo actually feels better than the version that he did.
Well,
And I produced the demo.
interesting. So you were producing early on.
Well, when I say I produced it, I mean I gathered all the musicians. I worked on the arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the studio telling everybody what I wanted, how to do it. I guess so, yeah, sort of. But
Yeah.
I mean, not in my mind. That was what I had to do to get it done.
Well, and that's something that I've always felt was interesting is that, certain people, yourself included, have sort of a natural affinity for what I call the true role of the producer, which is not technical in nature, but it's really all about pre-production. It's all about
Organization.
yeah, well, and also getting the performance out of people,
Yeah. Yeah.
getting,
Well, I was always good at that.
yeah, clearly.
Well, I never thought about that way, but that's probably how I ended up doing what I do and being so good at it, I guess.
Well, let me take you forward a little bit from that then, because obviously you've worked with a lot of different artists for whom you've been that, muse, that sort of organizational aspect.
Right.
And as our technology has evolved, we went to 16 tracks, 24 tracks, digital. How has
Dolby,
yeah, well, all of that
digital,
stuff, yeah,
and now it's all Pro Tools. But well,
exactly.
here's the simplest answer to that. I've always been a techno freak.
Hmm.
So I've never been afraid of technology, and I've always embraced it. So I went through all the machinations of going from everything. I mean, I talked Dave Hassinger into buying 24 Dolbys at the Sound Factory
Nice.
when I was getting ready to do the Pan record because I wanted it to have this great silence to it. I've always been in love with technology. I helped Avid design these consoles and the HD system. Um, I've designed plugins for Waves. I'm a Waves artist, a UA artist, a Manly Labs, ATC. They built these speakers for me. I mean, because I love the technology side of it too. Not from a technical point of view, because I couldn't tell you a diagram from an iode from a trash can, but I can tell somebody when it sounds good and why, and when it doesn't.
Okay, so that's my question, though. I can see that you are clearly someone who knows how to embrace technology, who understands technology. How has that impacted the creative process when you're working with the artist? Because now we have unlimited tracks, we can overdub, we have the ability to undo, we have the ability to enhance so
Just
much.
makes my job easier. That's all.
Does it not impact decision making for you at all?
No, because I still make the records, the music, the same way I did when I was recording on 8-track analog. I still do the same thing.
So you're still going for that performance?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I make a lot of music that's done done programming, but then for every inflection and for every change, you have to add or subtract things to make it work.
Yep.
When you have 6 guys in a room looking at each other, it all happens. They all know what to do, and all the dynamics are automatically built in. When I did Richie Furet's record in Nashville with those 6 Nashville guys, all I overdubbed was the background vocal, the harmony vocals, and the strings and the choir.
So you're still going for that performance?
Well, that particular record, yes, that's what I was looking for, because I wanted that end of it to be a natural kind of, recording.
That's one thing I do find interesting is that there is now a generation of people who have come up who many of them have never really played in a band ensemble style like that.
Kidding? I mean, look at Zed. Look how many hits the guy's made.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a a guy who sits and plays music in a nightclub.
Well, and there's plenty of one-man bands and stuff like that. There's plenty of people, there is the occasional genius like a Prince or a Todd Rundgren who can envision it all in their head. Stevie Wonder's another one.
You know how enamored I was with Prince? When I worked at the Sound Factory in the beginning of my career as an engineer, next door to the Sound Factory on Selma is Hollywood Sound.
Sure.
And at Hollywood Sound was Earth, Wind, and Fire. So, Cavallo and Ruffalo were there every other day, and I got to become friends with Bob Cavallo and Joe Ruffalo, and they managed Prince's entire career, including producing and exec producing Purple Rain.
Mm-hmm.
So when they brought me his first album, and I remember the cover because he had on a pair of underwear.
I remember that album.
Chunky underwear.
Yep.
I couldn't believe this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just such a shame that he died from drugs because he was so
it's a shame. Yeah. A lot of these guys, I mean, I'm impressed with the idea that those kind of guys can in, like I think about Stevie Wonder recording a drum track before he's got the rest of the song down, and hearing everything in his head and stuff like that.
Yeah, well,
But
that's a genius. I
yes,
can't
absolutely,
do that.
absolutely. But there is now a whole generation coming up, and I taught a college class recently on recording, and one of the things that amused me was I had a class of 12 people, and only one of them had ever played with other people before because they're all so accustomed to working with loops and working
Yeah.
with. But that that energy that we're talking about when you get a band of people together in the same room and they're playing off of each other.
Can't beat it.
Yeah, exactly. And I wonder, has that, especially coming through a period of time where when you first started out, you really had to pretty much nail the whole thing, you know, to, okay, we can just we can track the whole thing, but the bass and drums is all we're going to keep, and we're going to overdub everything else again.
Well, that's kind of a earlier people did that.
Yeah,
I don't think
yeah.
they even do that anymore.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying is has the creative process
Changed?
changed
Yes,
in that sense?
dramatically.
And how has that affected your
Not me at all.
really? Okay.
No, because I can do any way you want to do it.
Uh-huh.
You want to do it one stick at a time. I just did an artist from Canada. The stuff came out amazing, and it's all programmed. We started with just a guitar track, acoustic guitar. So you can do that. But like I said, every dynamic change has to have something that makes it dynamic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whether it's adding another kick drum to make the kick drum louder or bigger, or a snare drum, adding it to make it bigger or louder, or whatever you have to do, it has to happen mechanically to make it organic, because
Yeah.
there is no dynamics to a drum machine.
Exactly. And even
It's
if you
going
program it.
bap, bap, and it never changes.
Yeah.
So
Well, you can program them if there are some that have
not
but-
unless
still-
you're a drum programmer, which I use sometimes because I want that.
Yeah.
Never happens.
And the best drum programmers are drummers, typically, right? Yeah, exactly, right?
Because the guy I use is incredible drummer.
Well, and if you think back to when all that stuff started coming in the late '80s with all the MIDI drums and everything, what did the smart drummers do? They learned how to program. Exactly.
And they're all drum machines. And I knew
Yes.
Roger Lynn when he was living in an apartment in North Hollywood.
Uh-huh.
And he said to me, "You got to come hear this." And I go, "Hear what?" He goes, "My drum machine." And it was one of those Roland drum machine things that had cabasa and clave and all that kind of junk. And he had all these wires, clip leads all over the bedroom going into different stuff. And it was where he conceived the Lynn LN1.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, too, you said that, because one of the best programmed drum tracks that I ever used was on Suddenly Last Summer with the Motels.
Uh-huh.
And Craig Cramp, the drummer for me at the time, programmed
Of course.
the Lynn drum machine.
Of course, because they understand and they've got the feel.
The dynamics and everything.
Yeah. But I think that's, to me, I see a kind of a change in the way we've made a lot of these recordings because of that. Because now people will sometimes think, I don't have to worry about the solo because I can overdub it later and stuff like that. Whereas a lot of those early records, there was a sort of immediacy there that I don't know that you necessarily
Some
get.
were done, though. I mean, when you look at You're No Good, and we spent 3 days doing that solo with Andrew Gold,
Uh-huh.
2 bars at a time to make it.
Ouch.
Yeah, well, he was an incredible arranger,
Yes.
but he wasn't, a guitar player like Waddy Wachtel or, somebody of that caliber. So we had to do it over and over a lot of times to get each piece of the solo correct.
Sure.
Because there's no way to go in and shift the pitch of anything. You couldn't do
Right.
that.
Right. Well, and MIDI did enable a lot of us to do a lot of things that we couldn't do before.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember tracking solos at, a slower speed and then picking them up again, and stuff like that, or keyboard parts or whatever. So there has definitely been, a lot of advantage to this, but it certainly has changed some of the feel, I think. Maybe it's just a different thing, but, for you to be able to adapt to that because you're dealing with, in certain ways, a different type of artist as the years have gone by, aren't you? I mean,
Oh yeah, like I'm actually going to start an album on Monday. It's all EDM stuff.
Oh, I love it.
And what's interesting about it is that we're going to cut two of the most iconic songs that I did in my career as EDM songs.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, nobody ever would have thought that anyone would try to do that with these songs. But we're going to do it with two of them that are, probably the biggest hits of my career.
Interesting. You work with a lot of younger artists now.
Yes.
And there's always been, to my mind, one of the most important roles of a producer is in developing the artist. Has that changed now that you have a different type of musician in that sense?
Not at all. It's all about the same thing. The song.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have the song, why are you even doing it?
Well, but what about the artist's own self-awareness? Is that any different now?
It's really dependent on the kind of, like this one kid that I've been talking to that I'm probably going to end up working with. I mean, first of all, the record that I'm starting with the EDM is with Katrina Wolverton, and I worked with her 10 years ago at the beginning of her career. She'd won 3 different times on Star Search when she was 13 years old.
Uh-huh.
It's an amazing voice. And we started a label through Sony, and I did her first album, and the single got inside the top 40, and I co-wrote that with her. And this is the girl that I'm going to do the EDM record with now, because she's really into EDM music, and she's got great ideas, so it seemed like the right progression for me. But this other kid that I'm thinking of working with, he's what they call Cali country.
Uh-huh.
As opposed to Nashville country.
Yeah, indie country.
Well, Cali country is more like towards the Eagles stuff versus,
right.
The kind of typical stuff that comes out of Nashville.
Is there a different sensitivity now among those kind of artists in terms of...
I don't know what you mean.
Well,
sensitive.
When these...
Is he insensitive?
Well, well, maybe that too. I don't know. But, when a lot of us were coming up, there were not these kind of rigid delineations of genres that we have now. And because of that, I think a lot of people are kind of making up their own style.
I don't agree with you.
Okay.
I mean, there was hard lines. I mean, you were an R&B artist. You were a pop artist. You were a country artist.
Yes, but they intermingled.
Were a rock artist.
But they intermingled, and I don't know that they intermingle as much now.
Tell me how, Ozzy Osbourne ever intermingled with James Taylor. I don't think so.
Actually, that would have been damn cool.
Yeah. There was pretty hard lines there.
Yeah. I mean, but...
It's just now there's more categories.
So from your perspective, really working with the artist hasn't changed that much in terms of helping them find their voice and nurturing them in those real production aspects.
It's the same process. I mean, the mechanics have changed.
Uh-huh.
But the process hasn't changed at all.
Okay.
At all, in my opinion.
So even with all the technology and everything, the ability to pitch notes, undo, you don't go for a lot of that stuff.
Oh yeah, of course I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I use Melodyne all the time. It was done differently in those days. I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
When I recorded Only the Lonely, for example, with the Motels, Marty Gerard was the sax player, and the last note of his solo was a little flat. So I used a Eventide harmonizer
to tweak it up a little bit.
Up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now you just throw it into Melodyne and move it.
Right. Right. So, but going back even before we had an Eventide, what did you do then? You just had to live with it, basically, right?
You either had to live with it or you did it again till you got it right. I mean, one or the other. And go listen to Monday by the Mamas and Papas. It is so fucking out of tune.
Absolutely.
It's hysterical.
That's a lot of the old Motown stuff. Same thing. There's so many clams in there. Well, that's just it. Yeah. No. Yeah. It was all about the performance.
The song.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Capturing that.
I mean, the performance is important, but not as important as the song.
Well, absolutely. And
I'll give you the classic example. Herb Alpert is not a singer. He's never sang a song in his whole life that I know of, except for This Guy's in Love with You.
Right.
Which was a #1 hit with Herb Alpert singing it.
Yeah. It's true. It's just, it's interesting to me to see that for a lot of us, even though all of that technology has changed, really the essence of what you're doing hasn't changed that much.
No.
You're still talking about capturing
Or
this.
I wouldn't be relevant then. I mean, otherwise I'd be in a pterodactyl and thrown into the trash bin, you know? Really.
Well, there are a lot of people who don't understand what a producer does and never have.
I can equate it easily, and I've done it all my life as a producer, okay?
Hmm.
Do you want me to tell you what a producer does?
Absolutely.
Do you know what a director in film does?
Yes.
Why?
Why do I know that? Or
Why do you know what a director in film does?
well, because films are a big part of our culture and we understand that.
So what does a director in film do?
Basically
Makes the movie.
Yeah, exactly. Shapes the dream.
Well, a record producer does the same thing in music that a director in film does.
Absolutely. But again, it's a nebulous kind of concept to a lot of people. And
Well,
that's
not
why
if
I've
you
always-
explain it in that way.
Uh-huh.
I've never had anybody not understand that.
Yes, and that is an analogy that I've used with people a lot too. That
Yeah.
the producer
I mean,
and the
as a
director.
director in film, I mean, I do everything from writing the songs to working on the arrangements to recording to mixing to finding the players to everything it takes to make that thing work.
Mhm.
I do.
But what I think is interesting is that we've gone from the ability to do anything we want, or we've gone from the ability to have to get it all right in one take over a period of 40 or 50 years to really being able to do anything we want with it in terms of changing that reality of the performance. And yet you're still focused on really the essential part of getting the essence of the artist.
Yeah, and I still stay with that. I mean, as much as I could redo, rearrange, retune, do all that stuff, I stay a lot with what originally happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it's horribly wrong, then no. But I like kind of the inspirational side of stuff. To me, that makes it A, more artistic, and B, it works better to me.
Yeah, and essentially the artist comes through that way a whole lot more, and you've done a lot of that in terms of nurturing that. You have worked with a lot of very well-established artists.
Well, yeah, but they weren't well established when I started working with them.
Well, and that brings up the question: is it easier or harder to work with an artist as they develop and gain more of a sense of who they are? Is there more pushback? Is it because obviously
Well,
there's
all
trust
the artists
relationship
that I've
either way.
worked with were not major stars when I started working with them. All.
Okay.
So I don't really know the answer to that. I've never had a Paul McCartney come to me and say, "Gee, I'd like to do a record with you," after all the years of him being successful. I've never had that happen. It's always me working with somebody, and then they are trying to make it, and then they make it.
But then after they've made it, like a James Taylor, for example,
Yeah,
you come back and work with them again,
I did for 10 years.
right? And so that's what I'm asking: is somebody like
That's a
James, for example?
familiarity thing. That's
Is it?
not a
Uh-huh.
discovery process. That's okay. I know what this is.
And I know who you are,
I
and
know who you are.
yeah.
Let's just keep going.
Yeah.
And that's what it is.
But so the creative relationship basically evolves as well, right? Along with the personal relationship in that
course.
sense.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because the trust is obviously essential
Oh, yeah,
to that.
absolutely.
Hmm.
I mean, you listen to Linda Ronstadt when I did Heart Like a Wheel, which is to this day an infamous record.
Yeah.
To me, it has like 4 good songs on it, and the rest of it is kind of filler. And you listen to Simple Dreams, it has, all those great songs and hits and everything that we did, Blue Bayou, It's So Easy, all those. It's a wonderful album. But it was her 4th album
Hmm.
versus the one I did was the first.
Hmm. Right. And she had obviously changed and evolved as an artist by then, and
She
was
is.
much more,
Yeah.
much more sure of herself.
What's funny is today she talks about how she hated the music that Peter and I made with her because she wanted to do nothing but ballads with the McGarrigle sisters,
Right. Right.
Heart Like a Wheel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Funny. So for you, I know that you came up in an era of, Sound Factory
Yeah.
and studios like that, and you've seen the entire industry change. You've seen not just the way we create music change, but the way we consume music
Right.
change dramatically. Again, has that changed for you anything about maybe not necessarily the way you work, but your choices?
It's only changed in the sense that I go to Muso AI. Do you know what that is?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay, I go to Muso AI and I go to, here it is, Muso AI, and I go to analytics, and that tells me how many streams I have.
Okay.
3,584,433,654
Okay. So,
billion.
uh-huh.
I mean, so that to me is kind of like an incomprehensible figure,
We can quantify. Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
But it doesn't change for you anything about your choices in that sense. I love that because
No.
that's
My choices are made based on this.
mhm.
And it's always been that way and probably will be that way till the day I die. It's not going to change. I'm not a mechanical person, you know.
Mhm. Yeah. We're human beings and we're making human music.
Driven kind of,
Yeah. And especially with much of the music that you make, because much of the stuff that you have produced is, I would say, relatively sparse in terms of your arrangements. I mean, yes, you have,
Yeah.
but
I kind of learned that methodology from Peter Asheville because he was pretty good at that too.
I had the privilege of watching Peter work. I worked at Cherokee for a number of years and back in the 80s.
Yeah,
And
I knew the Robs when they were on the TV show down in the Santa Monica.
oh yeah, we could go into Rob's stories forever,
Ray
but
Cramp was the drummer in that band.
uh-huh. Yeah, that was an interesting family there for sure. But now you see that kind of stuff and you just think, okay, so now as you have come up and all of that stuff has changed, all the technology has changed and everything, it seems like you are still maintaining the same sort of role as a producer that you did even back then, which is really kind of interesting. But Peter Asher is one of those people also who he maintained very, very sparse arrangements. He got everybody to really just, it's all about the parts blending together. It's not about laying a whole bunch of stuff over the top.
I know what he does. I've worked with him every day for 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's brilliant, man. Brilliant.
So, yeah, I mean, and also you have to remember that he started out as an artist, so he comes from that side again.
Yes, yes. Well,
Same
and
as I
again,
did.
same as you. Yeah. But now coming to it from that perspective, again, even what you're doing now, a lot of the stuff is going to be spare
Yeah.
and, nothing more than necessary in that sense. Which, of course,
I've never been a Phil Spector style producer. 4 drummers, 4 piano players.
I have to wonder about that.
Players. Well, the wall of sound, it worked. And
it worked for him.
He did.
It worked for him, absolutely. And, those are, again, legendary recordings. And, the Brian Wilson stuff, the Jan Berry stuff, all of
Brian
those.
Wilson, that's another one.
Brian Wilson's another one. I watched him work in the studio, too. And, it's...
I worked with Brian.
Did you?
Yeah, we were doing a bunch of stuff back in the late 80s.
Uh-huh.
It never came to fruition, but we worked in the studio for probably a month on stuff.
All right, so let me conclude with a question that I ask a lot of people, and it would be definitely relevant for you. You work with younger people now. Obviously, you mentor people, you work with younger artists and everything. What would you say to 15-year-old you coming up in today's musical environment, both the industry and the technology? Would you advise them? How would you advise them in terms of wanting to get into it?
I've done that a number of times in the past. And my advice to somebody like that is follow your dream, don't hold back, and don't let anybody talk you out of it. The thing that my parents did for me that I'm forever grateful is they made me fearless to fail. I don't care. I'll try anything. And I'll give you an example. I tell this story, and maybe you'll hear it, maybe you won't, but David Kirschenbaum, who's a dear close friend of mine, who recently had a wonderful success with Tracy because Luke Combs' cover of that song and some performance on the Grammys.
Oh, David's legendary anyway.
Yeah. So David called me up. This was probably in the 90s, probably 97 or 98. He had a ranch up above Santa Barbara that he had a studio in, and he said, I've got 3 projects going and I can't do them all. Can you come up and produce one of them? And I said, sure. And he said, have you ever used Pro Tools? I went, oh yeah, no problem. I've never seen it in my life. And that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
No fear to fail.
Yep.
I went up there. I worked from 4 in the afternoon till about 6:30 in the morning trying to get a drum track to go down. And he walked in the studio about 9. He goes, "So where's the track?" And I go, "Well, I'm just about done with the drums." He goes, "Just about done with the drums? You've been here all night." I went, "Yeah, well, I'm trying to figure a couple things out." But when he asked me if I knew that Pro Tools, I had never seen a Pro Tools computer in my entire life.
Say yes and then learn, right?
Don't be afraid.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting because a lot of people have come up that way. Just basically, as you say, fearless,
Yeah.
And I
Well,
guess
it's not having a fear of failure. That doesn't scare me. If I don't get it, I'll figure out a way out to get it.
comes down to also how you define failure and success, doesn't it?
Well, I suppose you could say that, but we all kind of know what failure is, something that doesn't work.
Yeah, but it's also about pulling it out of the hat.
I've done that.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have, and that's, as you say, I mean, you obviously did okay with that project, whatever it was. You know?
True.
Mm-hmm. So, therefore, as you say, don't be afraid to fail, right?
Yeah. Fearless.
Love it. Val Garay, thank you for being my guest. It's been a pleasure.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Daniel Keller. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us each week for Insights in Sound.